All right, everybody. Glad you could join me. Welcome to another edition of Art Brunch. You know the drill there. All right, today we again journey across continents and centuries to explore one of humanity's most profound philosophical insights, the art of letting go. Now, though separated by thousands of miles and developed in vastly different cultural contexts, Buddhism and Stoicism arrived at remarkably similar conclusions about the nature of reality, of suffering, and the path to inner peace. Both traditions recognize that our attachments, whether they be to possessions or outcomes, to people, or even to our own thoughts, are the primary source of human suffering. As we walk through this presentation, we'll explore, as we did last week, various artworks from Eastern and Western traditions. These paintings and drawings serve as visual meditations on non-attachment, each offering a unique lens through which to understand this timeless principle. Art, perhaps more than philosophy alone, has the power to make abstract concepts tangible, to transform intellectual understanding into felt experience. Buddhism identifies attachment as one of the three poisons of the mind, alongside ignorance and aversion. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from our clinging to impermanent phenomena. We grasp at pleasures that fade, relationships that change, and a sense of self that is ultimately illusory. The solution Buddhism proposes is not to renounce life, but to engage with it fully while releasing our desperate grip on outcomes. The Stoic tradition, developed by Greek and Roman philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Democritus, arrived at parallel conclusions, though through different reasoning. The Stoics distinguish between what lies within our control, our judgments, our values, our responses, and what lies outside of our control, which is virtually everything else. True freedom, they argued, comes from focusing our energy exclusively on what we can control, while accepting with grace what we cannot. Salvatore Rosa's Democritus in Meditation captures the Stoic philosopher in contemplation, surrounded by the ruins of classical architecture. The crumbling stones symbolize the impermanence of all earthly glory and power. Democritus, he was known as the laughing philosopher, understood the transient nature of worldly affairs. His calm demeanor amid decay embodies the Stoic principle of apatheia. Not apathy in the modern sense of the word, but freedom from destructive emotions through rational understanding. Now, both of these traditions ground their teachings on non-attachment in the recognition of impermanence. To attach ourselves to what must inevitably change is to guarantee our own suffering. Caspar David Friedrich's The Monk by the Sea presents a solitary figure confronting the vastness of nature. The monk, rendered almost insignificant against the enormous sky and sea, represents the individual facing forces beyond comprehension or control. And yet there is dignity in his solitude, a stoic acceptance of his place within the cosmos. The painting invites us to release our inflated sense of importance and find peace in our smallness. A Buddhist art frequently celebrates the beauty of simplicity and the freedom found in material detachment. The tradition of monks carrying only a begging bowl and robes exemplifies this principle, and such imagery permeates Eastern artistic traditions. The Western Vanitas tradition, which flourished in the 16th and 17th centuries, shares Buddhism's recognition that attachment to material wealth, pleasures, and even our accomplishments is ultimately futile. These paintings serve as visual reminders that earthly pleasures and possessions are temporary. This work, Vanitas Still Life, with the Spinario by Peter Kleitz, presents an arrangement of objects symbolizing earthly pleasures and achievements, musical instruments representing art, books symbolizing knowledge, coins representing wealth, fine goblets representing sensual pleasure. Yet among these objects lie inescapable reminders of mortality: a skull, a timepiece. The painting argues in the language of Stoicism that wisdom lies in recognizing the temporary nature of all worldly goods. Antonio de Pereira's The Gentleman's Dream is a profound Baroque Vanitas painting, allegorically depicting the fleeting nature of worldly life and power, especially, and pleasure, through a sleeping nobleman whose dream reveals symbols of vanity, like crowns, armor, music, and wealth, contrasted with inevitable death symbolized by skulls, an extinguished candle, and a coffin, urging viewers towards spiritual contemplation over earthly pursuits. The composition uses dramatic chiaroscuro, which is light and shadow, and uses a dark background highlighting the futile glory of human achievement against the stark reality of mortality. Harman Stenvik's An Allegory of the Vanities of Human Life takes this meditation even further. A magnificent shell, symbols of learning and music, a Japanese sword, all the treasures one might accumulate surround a human skull. The message aligns perfectly with both Buddhist and Stoic teaching. Death renders our material attachments meaningless. The painting doesn't counsel despair, though, but rather wise prioritization of what truly, truly matters. Now, this work, The Repentant Magdalene, serves as a dramatic Baroque exploration of non-attachment and impermanence by depicting the literal discarding of worldly identity in favor of spiritual transformation. Unlike traditional depictions where Magdalene is a solitary hermit, this artist places her in a lavish, aristocratic setting. The beautiful confusion of cast-off brocade shoes, pearls, and jewels scattered on the floor symbolizes her active rejection of vanity, the attachment to transient material status. The background features an angel symbolizing virtue, driving out a devil symbolizing vice. This visualizes the internal struggle of letting go of past attachments. The fleeing devil, representing worldly vice, signifies the impermanent nature of sinful pleasures that must be abandoned for eternal salvation. Now, two handmaids at the door represent the dual paths of response to this idea of impermanence. One of the maidens cries contrition, accepting the need for change. while the other maid gestures in annoyance. She is vanity, clinging to the old life. And Mary Magdalene, she lies half naked on the floor, stripped of her finery in a state of radical vulnerability. This raw state emphasizes the impermanence of her former courtesan identity and her new non-attached spiritual vulnerability as she listens to her sister. Albrecht Dürer's St. Jerome in his study shows the scholar saint in a space of ordered peace. Books, a skull, a sleeping lion, his tools of translation. They are all arranged in harmonious balance. Jerome had withdrawn from worldly ambition to dedicate himself to sacred scholarship, and yet his study is far from austere. The engraving suggests that renunciation of one kind of attachment, like to status or to wealth or to pleasure, can actually enable a different kind of rich engagement, one with learning, purpose, spiritual practice. So non-attachment doesn't create barren emptiness, but allows for focused fullness. Non-attachment doesn't mean avoiding pain. It means not amplifying suffering through resistance. Buddhist art often depicts enlightened beings maintaining perfect equanimity amid turmoil. The death of Buddha shows the Buddha's passing into complete liberation. Surrounding him are grieving disciples, animals, and spirits. Even the trees bow in sorrow. And yet the Buddha himself reclines in perfect peace. He neither clings to life nor pushes death away. His final teaching is this very equanimity in the face of the ultimate change. The painting asks us to consider, if we can greet even death without attachment, what lesser loss should disturb our peace? The Stoics taught that we should prepare ourselves for adversity, understanding that suffering is an inevitable part of life. The wise person doesn't rail against fate, but accepts it while maintaining inner virtue. Jacques-Louis David's The Death of Socrates portrays the philosopher's final moments with unflinching Stoic dignity. Condemned to death by Athens, Socrates refuses exile or escape. Instead, he calmly reaches for the cup of hemlock while continuing to teach his disciples. His upraised finger suggests he is still discoursing on philosophy, even at death's threshold. Socrates embodied the Stoic principle that external circumstances, even death, cannot touch the inner citadel of the virtuous soul. He was unattached to life itself, just like the Buddha, focused solely on living and dying well. Rembrandt's Aristotle contemplating the bust of Homer shows the philosopher, which is actually a self-portrait, resting his hand on Homer's head, a chain of office draped across his rich garments. Despite his worldly success, Aristotle's expression is contemplative, perhaps melancholic. The painting has been interpreted as a meditation on the conflict between worldly achievement and philosophical values. And the heavy chain he's wearing becomes ambiguous. Is it an honor or more of a burden? The work invites reflection on what we truly value and whether our attachments serve us or enslave us. The second noble truth of Buddhism identifies craving or thirst as the origin of suffering. We suffer not because we lack things, but because we crave them. Non-attachment is the antidote to this endless cycle of wanting. Ohara Kosen's monkey-catching reflection of the moon shows a monkey attempting to grasp at the moon's reflection in water. A classic Buddhist metaphor for the futility of grasping at illusions. The monkey's effort is both charming and absurd. We even laugh at its folly. And yet the painting asks us to recognize ourselves in the monkey's desperate grasping. How much of what we chase is equally illusory? How many reflections do we mistake for reality? The Stoics advocated for self-sufficiency and independence from external goods. So the wise person finds contentment, not in acquiring more, but in wanting less. These two paintings by Henry Osawa Tanner work together to express this idea of contentment beautifully. A man and a boy, who is likely his grandson, find deep satisfaction in the simple things of life, like time together, learning a music lesson, and being grateful for a simple meal. Like the Stoics taught, these people want less. And so viewers looking at these works feel a spirit of wisdom in these two. Suzuki Kitsu's Morning Glories captures the extraordinary beauty of delicate flowers in full bloom, with others not yet bloomed. But these images are more than that. It is a meditation on the idea that life has stages, each containing its own beauty. You see, morning glories open at sunrise and close by afternoon, making them traditional symbols of impermanence. And yet, here they are painted with such tenderness, such attention, that we see impermanence not as tragedy, but as the very condition that makes beauty possible. To appreciate the morning glory fully, we must release our wish for it to last forever. One of the most subtle aspects of non-attachment, easily misunderstood, is that it doesn't require withdrawal from life. Rather, it enables fuller engagement because we're not paralyzed by fear of loss or driven by desperate neediness. In this work, you see the full one on the left and a close-up on the right. A mighty river, representing the dynamic forces of nature and life, moves rapidly past a fisherman. But amidst the rapidly changing forces of nature, the fisherman is keenly focused. He possesses a state of mindfulness that does not resist such forces, but works in harmony with them. Buddhism teaches that liberation comes through awareness, seeing clearly the nature of reality without the distortions of craving and aversion. Art serves as a tool for cultivating this awareness. Western art, particularly in the Christian contemplative tradition, also values awareness and presence as paths to spiritual freedom. Fra Angelico's The Annunciation depicts Mary receiving the angel Gabriel's message with remarkable calm. Her hands are crossed over her chest in acceptance. She embodies the Christian virtue of surrender to divine will, which parallels both Buddhist acceptance and Stoic amor fati, which means love of fate. Mary here is unattached to her own plans, her own vision of the future. She is open instead to what is. Caspar David Friedrich's Woman at a Window shows a woman from behind looking at the world through a window. She is still. She is contemplative, a witness to the scene rather than a participant demanding specific outcomes. The window frame creates boundaries, suggesting the limitations of perception. Yet within those limitations, she finds a view worth patient attention. The painting captures a moment of pure awareness, uncluttered by the noise of wanting. Impressionism and Buddhism intersect through their shared focus on the transient nature of reality. While 19th century Impressionists did not always explicitly identify as Buddhist, their radical techniques, capturing fleeting light, dissolving solid forms, and embracing the now, directly mirror the Buddhist concepts of impermanence and non-attachment. Claude Monet's work is widely recognized as a bridge between Western art and Eastern contemplative thought. Monet spent hours in Zen-like meditation in his garden. The water lilies focus on reflections and the shifting surface of the water, illustrate a world without a fixed center or boundaries. It is a visual representation of non-attachment to a stable self. And by painting the same subject at different times of day, Monet demonstrated that neither the viewer nor the object is permanent. The cathedral dissolves into light, showing that its solid reality is an illusion of perception. These paintings capture the fleeting quality of atmosphere, where stone structures become spectral and intangible, reflecting the idea that all things are in a constant state of flux. Now, the next work might come across as quite a jolt compared to Monet. This work has been described as a lament, one of the final paintings before his death. For me, it is a deep and powerful meditation on the passage of time and the impermanence of life from the brush of Vincent van Gogh. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it bears no fruit, the biblical passage states, and which Van Gogh was certainly conscious of when he painted works like this one. If you know his biography, then Van Gogh's Spartan existences certainly declared an attitude of non-attachment to things. Before our final slide, just take a moment with this work. And I can't think of a more fitting painting to close with than this work of the Buddha by French symbolist Odilon Redon. It really is a perfect example of the convergence of East and West. So take just a few seconds with this work. The Buddha walks through a setting of serene beauty, and yet he seems unattached to the beauty enveloping him. Both Buddhism and Stoicism teach that freedom comes not from controlling the external world, but from releasing our desperate grip on its pleasures, even beauty, and also its outcomes that we cannot control. Artists themselves practice a form of non-attachment in their work. A brush stroke once made cannot be taken back. The painter must commit fully to each mark while releasing control of the final outcome. This creative process mirrors the spiritual practice. Full engagement with the present moment, acceptance of what emerges, non-attachment to preconceived results. What might our lives look like if we practice such non-attachment? It wouldn't be a life of withdrawal or joyless resignation, but one of deeper engagement, loving without suffocating possessiveness, working without anxious ambition, enjoying pleasures without enslaving ourselves to them, facing losses without being destroyed by them. We would be like Okio's fisherman that we saw earlier, in mindful attention amidst life's powerful forces. Or we could be like the Buddha here in Odilon Redon's work, who gracefully walks through the wonders of life, even its marvelous beauty, without clinging to any of it. We would then be able to navigate life by releasing our white-knuckled grip on how we think life should be, and instead open our hands to receive life as it is, which is infinitely more than we could have grasped.